My name is Harper Quinn. I'm 29 years old. I've served in the United States Army for nearly 10 years, and in that time, I've learned how to survive under the harshest conditions. I've been deployed in active combat zones, patched up wounded soldiers with shaking hands, and buried friends who never made it home. I've slept under the stars in enemy territory, gone days without rest, and fought battles with nothing but instinct and grit. I've stared down men who wanted me dead. But the worst betrayal I ever faced didn't happen overseas. It happened in my own home, in my own bed, by the two people I loved the most. Before I ever wore a uniform, I was just a girl from a small town with a big heart and bigger dreams. That's when I met Noah. He was my calm in the chaos, the steady hand I thought I could hold on to. I fell hard, and I fell fast. He was charming, humble, and said all the right things. He talked about forever like he meant it. When I enlisted, I was scared of losing him, but he made me believe we could handle it. That love could survive distance, war, and time zones. We got married after a year of dating. Everyone said it was too fast, but I didn't care. I believed in us. Noah wasn't just my husband. He was my anchor. Every time I got on a plane for a new deployment, every time I kissed him goodbye in my uniform, I held on to the idea that he'd be there when I came back. That no matter how far I went, I had someone waiting for me. That's what kept me going during the worst of it, the sandstorms, the gunfire, the months of silence and fear. I told myself, just get home. He'll be there. He always is. But things changed during my last deployment. I started noticing little shifts. At first, they were subtle. Delayed replies. Missed calls. A change in tone. He said he was just stressed. Work was piling up. The weather was bad. But I knew Noah, or I thought I did. Something was off. And then came the mentions of Savannah. My stepsister. She and I never had a close bond, but we grew up under the same roof after our parents got married. Savannah was always dramatic, always needy, always finding ways to make herself the center of attention. She was the kind of girl who copied everything I did but pretended it was her own idea. I never hated her, I pitied her, maybe. But she was family. She knew how much Noah meant to me. She came to our wedding. She toasted us. I never imagined I'd need to keep my own husband safe from her. During one of our video calls, I noticed a reflection in Noah's glasses. Long blonde hair, Savannah's hair. I asked who was there. He laughed it off and said Savannah had dropped by to return a book. He said she was helping with the garden. That she brought over dinner now and then. It didn't feel right. But I was 7,000 miles away with a weapon in my hand and orders to follow. What could I do from that far? I talked myself out of it. Told myself not to be the jealous wife. That Savannah was just being kind. That Noah would never. And then I got emergency leave. 2 weeks. Just enough time to come home, breathe, and reset. I didn't tell Noah. I wanted to surprise him. I pictured it so clearly in my head, me walking through the door, him dropping everything, arms around me, saying, "I missed you, baby." I played that scene in my head all the way through the airport, the cab ride, up the driveway. I was still in uniform when I walked up to our front door, heart racing with nerves and excitement. I unlocked the door and stepped into silence. The house was too quiet. The lights were dim. A candle burned in the living room, something soft and floral. Not my scent. I walked further in. My boots echoed off the tile. There were 2 glasses on the coffee table. A woman's purse I didn't recognize. A denim jacket that wasn't mine draped over the couch. My stomach turned. I stepped into the hallway and paused at the bedroom door. It was cracked open. And inside, I saw everything. Savannah. My stepsister. Her hair tangled on my pillow. Her hand on my husband's chest. Noah. Shirtless. Laughing. Whispering. Until they saw me. Time didn't slow down, it stopped. I stood there, chest tight, heartbeat like a drum in my ears. Savannah gasped, scrambling to cover herself. Noah froze. He didn't even say my name. He just stared at me like I was the one who didn't belong. Neither of them spoke. I looked at Noah. Really looked at him. This man who had kissed me goodbye before I flew halfway across the world. The man who promised me faithfulness. Who wore my wedding ring while he undressed my stepsister in our bed. And Savannah? She didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. She pulled the sheet up over her chest and had the audacity to say, "It just happened." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I stood there, in the same boots I wore through combat, dust still clinging to my uniform, metal still pinned to my chest, and I looked at them like they were strangers. Because that's what they were now. Hollow shells of people I used to love. I turned around and walked out of that house. But something inside me stayed behind. The girl who trusted. The wife who waited. The sister who believed in loyalty. She died that day. What rose in her place was someone colder. Smarter. Focused. I've been trained to fight. To plan. To take down enemies in silence. And now? I have a mission. And this time, it's personal. I didn't go back to base that night. I didn't go to a hotel either. I drove for hours, no direction, no destination, just silence and the sound of my own breath tightening in my chest. My hands gripped the steering wheel like it could anchor me to something real, something that hadn't just shattered in front of my eyes. I was still wearing my uniform, still had sand in the creases of my boots, and my heart felt like it had been left on the bedroom floor next to Savannah's shirt. I ended up at a 24-hour diner on the edge of town. The kind of place with cracked vinyl seats and coffee that tastes like burnt metal. I slid into a booth in the far corner, facing the door out of instinct. Old habits. A waitress with tired eyes asked if I wanted a menu. I just shook my head. "Coffee," I said. My voice didn't even sound like mine. She brought the cup, and I sat there, staring into the black swirl of liquid like it could give me answers. My wedding ring still sat on my finger. I turned it slowly, like maybe I could rewind time with it. I'd fought so hard for a future I believed in, for love, for family, for something worth surviving for. And in one moment, it was gone. I don't know how long I sat there. The sun started rising outside before I even noticed. The waitress refilled my cup twice without asking. Eventually, I pulled out my phone. No missed calls. No texts. Of course not. Noah didn't chase me. He didn't come after me. Neither did Savannah. They didn't even try. That's when it hit me, they didn't feel guilty. They felt free. They'd probably convinced themselves I'd be gone forever. That deployment meant they could do whatever they wanted. That I wouldn't come back. Or maybe, they were hoping I wouldn't. It wasn't just an affair. It was a decision. A quiet agreement between two people who shared a bed and buried a betrayal under my name. I could have exposed them right then. Posted pictures. Told everyone. Shamed them on social media. But that would have been messy. Emotional. Weak. And I wasn't weak. I was trained. Focused. Precise. So I started making a list, not of names, but of facts. Where they worked. Who their friends were. What lies they'd told. What they had to lose. Noah had a clean image in town. An upstanding husband of a military woman, the type people called loyal and admirable. I knew that image could be used against him. I knew exactly where he kept his financial records, his emails, even his private cloud folder that he thought was locked away. He forgot who helped him set it up. Savannah was another story. Spoiled. Reckless. Always needing attention. She worked at a local wellness clinic as a receptionist. Pretty smile. Fake concern. She'd posted selfies in my house, in my mirror, while I was away. I remembered one clearly, her wearing my necklace, the caption something stupid like, channeling main character energy sparkles. They thought they could erase me. Replace me. They had no idea what was coming. I moved into a short-term rental under a different name, something military taught me well. No one knew where I was. I told my CO I needed a few days to handle a personal emergency. I didn't tell him what. I couldn't. Not yet. I started building a file. Digital and physical. I compiled text logs, bank statements, surveillance footage from her home camera, which they'd forgotten to disable, and photos that would destroy Noah's precious reputation. Every smile they shared, every kiss, every lie. I collected all of it, piece by piece. But it wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my voice. My power. I'd spent years protecting others, defending freedom, honoring my vows. And when it was my turn to be protected, to be loved, they discarded me. So I stopped thinking like a wife and started thinking like a soldier. The first step was isolation. I cut off all contact with mutual friends. Blocked anyone who might accidentally leak my location. Deleted every trace of my presence from social media. If they wanted to know where I was, they'd have to sweat for it. And then I waited. 3 days later, I got the first message. From Noah: Harper, we need to talk. Please. I didn't respond. An hour later, I messed up. We both did. But it didn't mean anything. Still nothing from me. He kept trying. Texts. Emails. Even a voicemail where he pretended to cry. But the tone was never truly apologetic. It was panic. Not because he missed me, but because he was afraid of what I might do next. He should have been. Because this wasn't the old Harper anymore. This was Harper Quinn, soldier, strategist, survivor. And I was about to burn everything they built, one lie at a time. I stared at Noah's last message on my screen. Harper, I never wanted to hurt you. Please. Let's talk. The audacity of it made me smile. Not the kind of smile you give when you're happy, no. This was the kind that stretches across your face like a scar. Dry. Cold. I could feel the shift in me now. The girl who once cried herself to sleep missing him in the desert? She didn't live here anymore. This version of me didn't beg for closure. She planned outcomes. He wanted to talk? He would. On my terms. But first, I needed leverage. The kind of truth that didn't just sting, it crippled. I started where any soldier would, recon. I logged into our joint home security system. Noah had no idea I still had access to it. I'd helped set it up before my last deployment. Security was my comfort zone, and I made sure it was all encrypted. But I had the master code, and clearly, he'd never bothered to change it. I scrubbed through hours of footage, stomach tight, jaw clenched. It wasn't just one night. It wasn't a mistake. There were dozens of nights. Her car parked in the driveway for hours. Her using my coffee mug. Her wearing his hoodie, my hoodie. The one he used to bring to the airport when he came to pick me up. And then there were the audio clips. Conversations caught by chance, just loud enough for my wired living room mic to pick up. She won't find out. You're everything she's not. Harper's married to her job. This is real. They laughed after that. They laughed. The burn in my chest was familiar. It felt like deployment heat, dry, suffocating, but this time it wasn't from the sun. It was rage. Silent. Controlled. And exactly what I needed. I downloaded the clips. Archived the camera footage. Labeled everything with military precision, times, dates, notes. By the end of the night, I had a folder that could crush them both. But I wasn't ready to use it just yet. Because there's a difference between exposing someone and dismantling them. The next morning, I drove past the wellness clinic where Savannah worked. I didn't stop. Not yet. I just wanted to see her walk out. See if she looked guilty. She didn't. Her hair was perfect. She was laughing with a coworker. Wearing the necklace Noah gave me for our anniversary. That was when I knew she didn't just steal my husband. She wanted my life. She wanted the safety, the praise, the respect people gave me for being a soldier. She wanted the image, but not the scars that came with it. And I was going to make sure she understood every wound. I started small. Phase 1, Psychological Disruption. I mailed Noah a simple envelope. No return address. Inside was a single photo, me standing in uniform, staring straight into the camera, taken during my first deployment. On the back, I wrote just 2 words. I remember. 2 days later, I heard from a mutual friend. Noah had been asking around, paranoid. Wondering where I was, who I'd talked to. He knew I hadn't gone back to base. But he didn't know where I was now. That ate at him. Savannah messaged me next. Can we talk? Please? You deserve an explanation. I deleted it without reading the rest. Because I didn't want an explanation. I wanted impact. Phase 2 began the next week. I booked a private meeting with Noah's company HR, using a contact I had from my former role in a veteran outreach program. It wasn't hard to get in. I provided them with evidence that he had been engaging in a workplace relationship. Yes, Savannah occasionally helped him with small jobs, and that his conduct violated both moral and contractual clauses in their agreement with military spouse support. The footage I provided wasn't explicit. Just enough to make them question his integrity. Enough to open an internal investigation. A few days later, I got a tip: Noah had been put on temporary leave. I wasn't done. I used a burner email to anonymously leak their relationship timeline to Savannah's employer, complete with overlapping dates, details of her claiming to volunteer for military family events while I was deployed. All of it wrapped in a tidy, well-written complaint that painted her as manipulative and dishonest. Whether they believed it or not didn't matter. The seed was planted. By the end of the week, Savannah's smiling work photos were gone from the clinic's social media page. And still, I hadn't shown my face. Because that's the thing about true revenge. It's not loud. It's not chaotic. It's clean. Strategic. Untraceable. And it always hits harder when they don't see you coming. Late one night, I sat alone in the dark of my temporary apartment, staring at my wedding ring on the counter. I hadn't taken it off yet, not because I still loved him, but because I wanted to feel the weight of it when I dropped it. So I did. Right into the garbage disposal. I turned it on. The sound was sharp, brutal, metal grinding against metal. And just like that, I severed the last symbol of what we used to be. They thought I would crumble when I found them in bed. Instead, I became someone they can't escape. Because war teaches you patience. And now? I've only just begun. There's something unsettling about watching your enemies fall apart from a distance. It's not the satisfaction people expect. It's quieter, colder, a slow unraveling. Like pulling a thread from a sweater and watching the whole thing come undone, one stitch at a time. That was Noah and Savannah now. It had been nearly 2 weeks since I came home. Since I stood in that doorway and watched my marriage disintegrate in front of my eyes. Since I walked away without a word. And in that time, everything had changed, for them, not just me. Noah had been suspended from his job pending a professional misconduct review. I didn't need to see the exact wording. I already knew how that kind of investigation played out. Quiet whispers behind office doors. Suspicion. Distance. Eventually, termination. Especially for someone who liked to play the proud military husband card for clout. Savannah had taken a leave of absence from the clinic. My friend in town told me she claimed emotional exhaustion. She hadn't posted anything on social media in 5 days, which was basically a digital scream from her. Before, she used to post every detail of her day, her lunch, her outfit, her stupid coffee quotes. Now? Silence. Good. But I wasn't done. I could have destroyed them already. The evidence I had could burn them to the ground. But I didn't want a fire. I wanted to make them sit in the smoke. I wanted them to live in the discomfort of their own choices before I showed them the full cost. Still, the next part. I had to do in person. It wasn't about confrontation. It was about presence. Letting them see with their own eyes what I had become, not a victim, not a shell of a betrayed wife, but the version of me that came back with scars, strategy, and strength they never even imagined. I waited for the right moment. Noah had left the house mid-morning. I knew his patterns. He'd likely go to the gym, a routine he stuck to even now, probably trying to sweat out his guilt. Savannah was still inside. I parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest. Hoodie up. Hat low. Not hiding. Just calculating. The streets felt surreal. These were the same sidewalks I used to jog on before deployments. The same trees. The same houses. But I wasn't the same. When I reached the house, I didn't hesitate. I still had a key. I slid it into the lock and pushed the door open slowly. The house smelled like lavender air freshener and betrayal. I stepped inside, quiet as breath. I heard her before I saw her. Savannah was in the kitchen, humming, barefoot, scrolling through her phone. I walked right in. She turned and nearly dropped her mug. Harper? Her voice cracked. What are you? I said nothing at first. I let the silence stretch until it choked the air between us. She looked like a deer in headlights. Her hair was tied up. No makeup. The real Savannah, raw, exposed, human. I live here, I finally said, calm. Colder than she expected. She blinked. I thought. I mean, you disappeared. Funny, I said, stepping closer. That's exactly what you hoped I'd do. That's not true, she said quickly, clutching the mug like it could protect her. We never meant to. Don't, I cut in. My voice sharp enough to slice through her excuses. You did. You chose him. You chose to climb into my bed and wear my life like it was yours. And now, you want sympathy? She opened her mouth, but I wasn't done. I have the footage, Savannah. The audio. The timeline. Every kiss, every lie, every damn second. And don't worry, I've already sent it to 2 people in your clinic's administration. Just in case your little break turns into something permanent. Her face went pale. You're bluffing, she said, but she didn't sound sure. I pulled up my phone, tapped the screen, and played one of the audio clips. Her voice. Noah's voice. Laughter. Words that could never be taken back. She sank into a chair. Speechless. You think I'm here for revenge? I asked. I'm not. She looked up, confused. Then why? I'm here because I wanted you to see the woman you thought you replaced. To realize you could never be her. Not in this lifetime. You see, Savannah, I've faced death. Real death. I've fought for people who didn't even speak my language. I've pulled friends out of gunfire with blood on my hands. And still, none of that prepared me for you. Her eyes welled up. Tears. Of guilt or fear, I didn't care. I came home ready to rest. Ready to build something real. But you took that from me. So now, I'm not rebuilding anything. I'm clearing the damn wreckage. She covered her face. Whispered something. I didn't bother listening. I left the kitchen, walked upstairs, and packed a small bag of my things, not because I needed them, but because I wanted them on my terms. My medals. My photo albums. My journal. When I came back down, she was still frozen at the table. As I reached the door, I turned to her one last time. You and Noah were never my ending, I said. You were just the lesson. And then I walked out. No tears. No screaming. Just a quiet kind of power that comes from surviving something you weren't meant to. I didn't go to war to come home and fight one. But now that I was in it, they'd learn exactly what a soldier does when they've got nothing left to lose. After I walked out of that house, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel satisfied. I felt something deeper, a calm that almost scared me. It's the same calm I used to feel right before a mission. When your mind sharpens, your pulse steadies, and everything else, noise, doubt, fear, goes silent. Because when you're trained for war, you don't waste time on emotional chaos. You wait for the target. And now, my target was Noah. He was the root of it all. Savannah might have been the knife, but he was the hand that drove it in. The man I married. The man who vowed loyalty while crawling into bed with someone who called me sister. I knew where he'd be, our gym. Same routine for the last 5 years. Tuesdays and Thursdays, early morning weightlifting, late evening cardio. He always left his phone in the locker room, always wore wired headphones, always zoned out. I used to love that about him, how focused he got when he worked out. Now it just made him predictable. I didn't want a scene. I wanted an impression. A confrontation designed with precision. So I waited until Thursday night. The parking lot was dimly lit, mostly empty. I stayed in my car until I saw him walk out. He had a duffel bag slung over one shoulder, hoodie soaked with sweat, and his head down, lost in thought. Perfect. I stepped out of the shadows and spoke one word. Noah. He flinched hard, actually startled, and then froze when he saw me. Harper, he said, blinking like he wasn't sure if I was real. You're here. I am, I said. He stepped toward me, and I held up my hand. Don't, I said flatly. Don't come any closer. He stopped, eyes scanning me, desperate and unsure. Look, I know you're angry. I get it. No, I interrupted. You don't get it. Not even close. He exhaled, the kind of breath men take when they're trying to look vulnerable. But he'd lost that card with me. You don't just hurt someone like that and get to talk your way out, I said. This wasn't a mistake. It was a betrayal. Repeated. Deliberate. It wasn't like that. I laughed, once, dry and cold. Really? Because I've got footage that says otherwise. Audio, too. You want to hear yourself calling her everything I'm not? Or saying you hoped I wouldn't come back? He froze. You recorded us? No, I said. You recorded yourself. Security system. You forgot I built it. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Good. I came back from war expecting a home, I said. A husband. Peace. But what did I come home to, Noah? You and my stepsister playing house in my bed. My life turned into your playground. I was lonely, he muttered. I was too, I snapped. You think sleeping on sandbags while rockets hit 2 miles out isn't lonely? You think watching people bleed out and wondering if your next breath will be your last isn't lonely? He looked away. Couldn't meet my eyes. I stayed faithful, I said. Not just in body, in heart. I wrote letters I never sent. I imagined coming home to you. I fought to get back to you. He whispered, I never meant to hurt you. But you did, I said. And not just once. Every time you looked her in the eye and lied to me, you made a choice. His voice cracked. I miss you, Harper. God, I miss you. I made a mistake. No, I said, stepping closer, you made a decision. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. This was destruction. He swallowed hard, pain in his face, but it was too late for that. I'm not here to get you back, I said. I'm not here to scream or cry or beg. I came to tell you, in person, that I'm done. His face twisted. What do you mean? I mean the house? Sell it. I've already filed for divorce. My lawyer will be in touch. The footage? It's been sent to your company's ethics board and 2 of your biggest clients. His lips parted in shock. And your family? I added. They'll be receiving copies of your texts with Savannah. Since they always love to preach loyalty and Christian values, I thought they should see the truth. Noah stepped back like I'd hit him. You wouldn't. I smiled, the smallest, deadliest smile. I already did. He stood there, stunned. Lost. Maybe for the first time in his life, he saw the consequences of his actions arrive with boots on. I turned to leave. But before I did, I looked back one last time. Here's the thing, Noah, I said. You replaced me with someone easy. Someone you could control. But I came back with something you'll never touch again, power. And you? You're just the memory I burned to light the way forward. I walked away then, each step lighter than the last. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I was finally walking away from me. And I knew now, this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the start of one I'd write on my own terms. The air felt different after I left Noah in that parking lot. Not cleaner. Not lighter. Just still. It was the kind of quiet that comes after an explosion. When the dust is still hanging, the shock hasn't settled, and all that's left is the echo of what used to be. I drove for an hour with no music on, no destination in mind. Just the hum of the road and the low thud of my own pulse in my ears. That night wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about ending something that had hollowed me out for years. I had faced combat. I had faced death. But facing the man I once trusted with my entire future and walking away with my head high, that was a different kind of battle. A deeper kind of survival. I ended up at a lake outside of town, the one we used to visit during the early days of our marriage. I parked and walked down to the edge of the water. It was cold and dark, but quiet. No one around. Just the sound of wind moving through the trees. I stood there for a long time. Letting the cold bite my skin. Letting everything catch up to me. And then I cried. Not because I missed him, but because I finally stopped carrying him. Every time I deployed, every time I came home, I had carried the hope of that man with me. I wore it like armor. Now, that armor was gone. And underneath? Just me. My wounds. My story. My name. Harper Quinn. It was time to start living for her. The next few days were quiet. Not empty, but intentionally silent. I turned off my phone. I let my lawyer handle the legal cleanup. I ignored the voicemails from Noah's mother. I didn't respond to Savannah's desperate email that said, "Can we just talk one last time?" No. They had taken enough. It was my time now. I stayed in a quiet cabin outside town for a few weeks, paid in cash, off the grid. I journaled every morning. Ran every afternoon. I cooked my own food. Read books I'd been carrying around for years but never had the time to open. I even started sketching again, something I hadn't done since high school. At first, it was shaky. Then, freeing. Each page was a release. One night, I got a message from an old army buddy, Mia. She'd been one of the few people who truly understood me. We'd served together in Kandahar, then reconnected briefly a year ago before I got deployed again. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "I've got a place down in Georgia. Beach view. Come stay. Just breathe for a while." So I did. I packed a single bag and left everything else behind. The drive was long, but necessary. Miles passed under my tires like memories shedding skin. And when I pulled into her driveway, a small cottage with white shutters and seagrass swaying in the breeze, something clicked in me. Not closure. Just arrival. Mia greeted me with a hug that didn't require explanation. We didn't talk about Noah. Or Savannah. Or betrayal. She knew. And that was enough. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. And then I started building. Not plans for revenge. Not schemes or strategies. But something real. I volunteered at a veterans center downtown. Helped other women transition back into civilian life. Some had stories worse than mine. Some had no one. And sitting there, across from them, listening, I realized this was where I belonged now. Not in the wreckage of my past, but in the rebuilding of someone else's future. I started organizing art therapy sessions. Sketchbooks. Journaling prompts. We'd sit in circles and let the silence speak for us. Some cried. Some didn't. Some just breathed. And all of it mattered. It mattered more than Noah ever did. One evening, as the sun dipped below the waves, I stood barefoot in the sand with Mia beside me. She nudged me with her shoulder and asked, "What's next?" I looked at her, at the ocean, at the endless stretch of sky, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of an answer. I felt possibility. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I'm not scared of it anymore. Because the truth is, they didn't break me. They tried. God, they tried. But I'm still here. Stronger. Sharper. Whole. And one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, I'll meet someone who sees that. Who sees me. Not as the soldier, not as the wife, not as the girl who was betrayed. But as Harper Quinn. The woman who came home to ashes and built a life from the fire. It started slowly. I didn't even realize it was happening at first. Healing doesn't show up with a siren or a sign. It slips in through the cracks, in laughter you didn't expect, in mornings that don't feel heavy, in the space between thoughts where grief used to live. I had been staying at Mia's for nearly a month when it hit me. I hadn't thought about Noah in days. Not his voice. Not his face. Not the way he looked at me when I walked in on him in Savannah. It had all started to fade, like an old scar smoothing out. Still there, but no longer aching. I was rebuilding. One brick at a time. And then came someone I didn't see coming. His name was Elijah Hayes. We met at the Veterans Center. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. He was the guy who arrived early, stayed late, and made the people around him feel safe just by existing. Former Army. A decade older than me. He ran logistics during missions and now helped veterans navigate housing, job placement, and trauma support. He didn't flirt. He listened. The first time we talked, I was helping an older vet with mobility issues. Elijah stepped in without being asked, offered help without making it awkward, and when it was done, he turned to me and said, "You handle chaos like it owes you something." I laughed, a real laugh. First in a while. We kept running into each other. Morning coffee in the break room. Shared files over the printer. Notes left on Post-its when one of us fixed a schedule hiccup for the other. It wasn't romantic at first. It was respect. Mutual understanding. Then came the moment that changed everything. One evening, after an emotional group session, I stayed back to clean up. Elijah came in, silent as usual, and started folding chairs without being asked. We worked side by side in easy silence. Then he said, quietly, "I read your essay in the newsletter. About coming home to a life that wasn't there anymore." I looked at him, surprised. I hadn't told many people I wrote that. I'd submitted it anonymously under the title "Returning Without a Map." "I recognized the tone," he said. It was honest. Hard. Brave. I didn't know what to say. He added, "You're not alone, Harper. Not in this place. Not anymore." He said it so softly. Not like a pickup line. Like a promise. And something in me cracked open. After that night, I started noticing the small things. How he always brought an extra cup of coffee, just in case. How he waited to walk out with me, but never pushed conversation. How he never asked about Noah, or Savannah, or the fire I'd just walked through. He gave me space, and I didn't know how badly I needed that. One Saturday afternoon, we found ourselves walking along the shoreline after a community outreach event. It was warm, breezy, the kind of weather that makes you forget you ever lived through a storm. Elijah glanced at me and asked, "Do you ever think about starting over? Not just surviving, but actually living again?" It scared me, how much I wanted to say yes. I'd built walls so high even I forgot what was on the other side. But that day, something shifted. "I do," I said. "I just don't know how." He nodded. "Start with one step. The rest will follow." And just like that, something new began. We didn't rush it. There were no big declarations. No dramatic confessions under the stars. Just two people, walking slowly back to themselves. Sometimes beside each other. Sometimes in silence. Sometimes with laughter. He never tried to fix me. He never asked me to forget. He just stayed. And in a world that had taught me betrayal, that was the bravest thing anyone could do. One night, weeks later, I found myself standing in front of a mirror. No uniform. No wedding ring. No pain etched into my reflection. Just me. Harper Quinn. Hair pulled back. T-shirt soft from 1,000 washes. Eyes steadier than they'd been in years. And for the first time, I smiled at my own reflection. Not because I had someone, but because I finally had myself again. I was finally learning how to breathe again. It had been weeks since I saw Noah. Since I stood in front of him in that parking lot and reminded him, with every inch of my presence, that he no longer had power over me. Since I left behind the shattered version of my past and started piecing together something real, something mine. Life had found a rhythm. Not perfect, not painless, but peaceful in a way I hadn't known in years. Until the envelope came. No name. No return address. Just cream-colored paper, thick and deliberate, like whoever sent it wanted it to feel serious. Inside, one plain sheet of paper. No salutation. No threats. Just 3 lines. You think it's over? It's not. You should check your bank account. My hands tightened around the paper. I read it again. Slowly. Then again. My first thought wasn't fear, it was instinct. I'd lived through ambushes and roadside bombs. I knew what it felt like when danger was quiet. This was that same chill in my spine. That same sense that someone, somewhere, was trying to get under my skin. I grabbed my laptop and logged into the joint savings account Noah and I had opened early in our marriage, the same one we both contributed to for years. We'd stopped using it long ago, but it was still open. I hadn't touched it since the day I filed for divorce. The screen loaded. $0. Gone. I froze. That account had held over $20,000, savings from deployments, bonuses, hazard pay. Not just money, years of effort. Of sacrifice. Money I'd planned to split fairly, to walk away clean. Now? It was gutted. I scrolled through the transaction history. The withdrawals weren't reckless. They were calculated. Pulled out in careful amounts over the course of 3 weeks. Just small enough to avoid detection. Just fast enough to empty it before I noticed. All under Noah's name. And every single one done after I confronted him. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I just sat there, cold, silent, processing the weight of it. He wasn't done. He'd lost me. Lost the lies. Lost control. And this was his last shot at power. Stealing. Petty. Cowardly. I closed the laptop slowly, then picked up my phone and called my lawyer. He answered on the second ring, and before I could finish explaining, he sighed hard into the phone. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered. I told him not to touch that account until settlement. He did, I said. He drained it. "Can you send me the statements?" "Already downloading." He was quiet for a second, then added, "We'll freeze everything else. Any assets still linked to him, we'll lock down immediately. But this? It's going to be hard to recover unless we can prove it was intentional." "It was intentional." "Yeah," he said. "But proving that in court, it'll take time." I hung up, forwarded the documents, then stared at the screen long after the light faded to black. This wasn't just money. It was symbolic. Noah wasn't trying to recover anything. He wasn't desperate. He was punishing me, in the only way he had left. Not with words. Not with guilt. But with the cold, clinical theft of what I'd built. And he wanted me to know. That letter? It wasn't a warning. It was a smirk. Later that night, I sat on the porch of the cottage with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders and my mind racing with possibilities. Elijah noticed something was off. He came out silently, sat beside me, and offered a mug of tea. "You okay?" he asked after a minute. I told him everything. The letter. The account. The withdrawals. The calculated theft. He didn't interrupt. Didn't try to problem solve. He just listened, steady, still, present. That meant more to me than I could ever say out loud. When I finished, he looked out into the night and said, "You know, people like Noah, they don't think we can live without them. They think taking something from us puts us back in their orbit." "He thinks this brings me back into the game," I said. Elijah nodded. "But he doesn't know who he's playing against." His words didn't feel like comfort. They felt like truth. I stayed awake that night. Not out of anger, but purpose. Noah had underestimated me before. When I was still grieving. Still raw. But that Harper was gone. The one who stood here now had something sharper. Something colder. Something unbreakable. He wanted to remind me who he was? Fine. I'd remind him who I became. The next morning, I called the fraud unit at the bank, filed a formal complaint, and submitted all transaction records. I also reached out to a contact from my former unit, a cybersecurity specialist who now helped veterans recover stolen assets and digital identities. I asked her what we could track. What we could trace. What we could build. She called me back within the hour. "I've got something," she said. I pulled his IP address. He logged into that account from an unsecured device while at work. Perfect. That was the evidence I needed. Noah hadn't just stolen money. He'd used a company computer to do it. Which meant now, it wasn't just between us. It was between him and the law. I smiled for the first time that day. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted him off my map. Permanently. You don't break a soldier and expect her to fade. You don't steal from someone who's already lost everything and expect them not to rise. And you sure as hell don't taunt a woman who's already buried your legacy. This wasn't rage. It was order. It was justice, dressed in calm, built in silence. I was going to end this. Not by burning everything down, but by turning the spotlight on him and watching him squirm under a truth he couldn't escape. There comes a moment in every soldier's life when the mission shifts, when it stops being about survival and becomes about precision. That was me now. Noah had taken what little trust one had left in him and set it on fire. Stealing from our joint account after everything he'd already done wasn't desperation, it was dominance. A last-ditch move to remind himself that he still had a way to hurt me. But what he didn't realize, or maybe what he chose to ignore, is that I don't respond to pain the way I used to. Pain used to paralyze me. Now it focuses me. I spent the next 3 days laying groundwork. Quietly. Thoroughly. First, I filed an official complaint with the Internal Ethics Board at Noah's company. I didn't just send the bank transactions. I included a statement. I laid out the dates, the pattern, the intent. I reminded them that company policy forbade the use of work systems for personal finance activity, especially when fraud was involved. Then I reached out to the bank's fraud investigation unit again. With my cybersecurity contacts report attached, confirming that the withdrawals were made from a device registered under Noah's work network. And then, I went further. I contacted the Internal Revenue Service. Why? Because if he had transferred any of that money to another person, especially someone like Savannah, without reporting it properly, that was now taxable. Traceable. Investigable. It was never about just the money. It was about ensuring he was exposed from every angle. By the end of the week, I had confirmation. The bank froze Noah's personal accounts pending investigation. His company scheduled a disciplinary hearing. And Savannah? She'd gone radio silent. Likely because I had also sent a copy of the withdrawal timeline to the Board of Ethics at her clinic, along with the records of her inappropriate relationship with a married man while she was treating patients for trauma. Neither of them would be working in this town again. But I wasn't done. I needed Noah to know that this wasn't vengeance out of spite. It was correction. And correction only works when the person sees their reflection clearly. So I wrote him a letter. Not emotional. Not angry. Surgical. Noah. You thought I'd let it go. You thought taking what didn't belong to you, again, would put me back in the place where you left me, quiet, broken, obedient. But here's the difference between who I was and who I am. Before, I didn't know my worth. Now I do. Before, I let your silence convince me I was too much. Now I know I was never enough for you, because you were never enough for me. You've been reported to your company, to the bank, to the IRS, and to law enforcement. There will be investigations. There will be consequences. You didn't just lose me, Noah. You lost the right to believe you could ever control me again. I suggest you get a lawyer. Not because I'm coming for blood, but because this time, I'm making sure your name never touches mine again. Harper. I didn't sign it with love. Or hate. Just my name. Just truth. I mailed it the same afternoon I received the call I wasn't expecting, from Noah's assistant. She didn't give her name. Just left a message. I thought you should know, they put him on indefinite leave today. There's an official inquiry. HR says it doesn't look good. I saved the message. Not because I needed proof, but because I wanted to remember what justice sounded like. That night, I stood in the living room of Mia's cottage, barefoot, holding the envelope that once held his threat. Now I held something stronger. Peace. It wasn't loud. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure. There was no parade. No dramatic ending. Just quiet. And in that quiet, I breathed deeper than I had in years. Elijah stopped by around sunset. I didn't tell him everything, just that it was done. He didn't press. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small gift box. I blinked. What's this? He shrugged, smiling a little. Something I found at the bookstore downtown. Thought it felt right. I opened it. Inside was a compass. Old, worn, but still ticking perfectly. On the underside, a small engraving. Wherever you go, walk forward. I swallowed hard. Because after all of this, after everything I'd lost, everything I'd fought, I was finally starting to understand something. The real revenge wasn't what I did to Noah. It was what I'd built without him. A new life. A new voice. A new direction. One he could never touch again. It's over. Not just the noise. Not just the betrayal. The war inside me, the one that started the moment I opened that bedroom door and saw them together, it's gone quiet. The woman I was back then wouldn't recognize the one I am now. And that's the point. After everything, after confronting Savannah, after exposing Noah, after watching them both lose the power they once held over me, I've finally stepped into something I never imagined I'd find. Peace. Not the fake kind. Not silence that's waiting to explode. But real, steady, earned peace. Noah lost his job. Savannah moved out of state, or so I heard. Their names don't show up in my inbox, on my phone, or even in town whispers anymore. The people who once pitted me now avoid the subject altogether, too ashamed to admit they ever took sides. But it doesn't matter. Because for the first time in years, their existence doesn't orbit mine. I don't check my rearview mirror for ghosts anymore. I wake up when the sun hits my face, not from nightmares. My mornings begin with black coffee, a beach run, and the sound of waves instead of sirens in my head. I volunteer with veterans who remind me why I survived. I sketch again. I laugh without flinching. I live without apology. And Elijah? He never asked to be part of the story. But he stayed anyway. We're not rushing anything. We've both seen enough war to know that love isn't a battlefield, it's what you protect after the battle is over. He understands that I don't need saving. I need space to keep growing. And he gives me that, without question. Sometimes, late at night, we sit outside under the stars and say nothing at all. That's the kind of quiet I always dreamed about. Not empty, but full of everything I never had. I kept the compass he gave me. It sits on my nightstand now, ticking softly. A reminder. Not of where I've been, but of where I'm going. Because here's the truth. I was betrayed. Lied to. Replaced. I was called dramatic. Cold. Hard to love. I was made to feel like a burden. But I walked through fire. I didn't burn. I forged. And now? I'm not anyone's second choice. Not anyone's backup plan. Not anyone's regret. My name is Harper Quinn. I served my country. I buried a marriage. I stood face to face with the people who tried to break me, and I walked away stronger than they'll ever be. I'm not looking back. Because the past doesn't get to follow me anymore. The future? It's mine now. And I'm walking into it with my chin high, my shoulders squared, and the quiet power of a woman who knows her worth. So to every girl watching this, who's been lied to, left behind, underestimated. Let them doubt you. Let them betray you. And then rise, so far above them, they have to look up just to whisper your name. If this story moved you, inspired you, or lit a fire inside you, do one thing for me. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story that might just remind you who you are. You're stronger than they ever imagined.